The evening had started like any other, a dinner gathering Claire insisted I attend with her friends. I knew the routine well: smile, nod at the right moments, let them talk over me, and accept my role as the insignificant extra in Claire's world. But I hadn't expected this. The red wine hit my face before I even registered the motion of Claire's hand. Warm liquid dripped down my cheek, soaking into my collar, staining my shirt. For a second, the restaurant's soft background chatter dimmed, the whole room frozen in silent shock. Except for Claire, she laughed, not nervously, not apologetically, but sharply, fully amused. The kind of laugh that let everyone know she meant it. "Why are you always acting like such an idiot?" she sneered, tilting her half-empty wine glass as if considering throwing the rest. Laughter erupted around the table. Some of her friends giggled into their napkins. Others exchanged uncertain glances, unsure if they should join in. One or two looked uncomfortable, but none would dare challenge Claire. I sat there, wine seeping into my skin, the acidic scent filling my nostrils. Every instinct screamed at me to react, to say something, to defend myself, to throw the damn wine back in her face. But I didn't. I reached for a napkin, dabbing at my face slowly, feeling the humiliation burn deeper than the sting of the alcohol. This wasn't the first time Claire had embarrassed me in public. It wasn't even the worst thing she had done. But something was different this time. The way she looked at me. There was no pretense, no mask. She wasn't just being cruel. She was enjoying it. All eyes were on me, waiting. Would I lash out? Would I storm off in a huff? Would I laugh along and let Claire win again? I did none of those things. I took a slow breath, straightened my posture, and calmly placed the napkin on the table. Without a word, I stood, adjusted my shirt as best as I could, and turned away. The restaurant floor felt endless as I walked out, whispers following me. Behind me, Claire chuckled, no doubt making some comment about how dramatic I was being. I didn't care. By the time I got to my car, my hands were steady. No shaking, no hesitation. I unlocked the door, slid into the driver's seat, and let the silence wrap around me. The scent of the wine clung to my skin, but I knew. It wasn't just wine I was smelling. It was the end, not just of this night, of everything. The decision. I drove home on autopilot, my mind replaying the last few months. No, the last few years. The cutting remarks disguised as jokes, the dismissals, the way she treated me like an afterthought in my own life. It had been happening for so long, creeping into our marriage like rust on metal, slow and corrosive, and I had let it. But tonight was different. Tonight I wasn't going to wake up and pretend it hadn't happened. I wasn't going to let Claire sweet-talk her way out of it, or buy me a meaningless apology gift to smooth things over. I wasn't going to let myself believe, even for a second, that I had to endure this any longer. By the time I pulled into the driveway, my decision was made. This wasn't just another cruel joke. This was the last straw. I stepped into the house, locking the door behind me. The familiar scent of home surrounded me, though it hadn't felt like our home in a long time. It was hers. I walked past the framed wedding photos, past the expensive decor Claire had insisted on, past the perfectly curated life she had built on my silence. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the dark screen of my laptop. My reflection was faintly visible. A man I barely recognized. That was about to change. I opened the laptop and pulled out a notepad, clicking my pen open with a quiet snap. And then I started writing. Not a letter, not a complaint, not an angry outburst. A list. Every insult, every humiliation, every moment I had swallowed my pride for the sake of peace, dates, words, actions. Things I had forced myself to forget, but never truly had. The words flowed easily, almost too easily. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about making her suffer. It was about remembering. Because for too long, I had convinced myself that maybe I was overreacting. Maybe she didn't mean it. Maybe it was just how Claire was. But as I stared at the pages filling up with ink, I knew the truth. It had never been me. It had always been her. And now, it was over. The confrontation. Claire didn't come home right away. I wasn't surprised. She loved the attention too much to leave early, especially after her little spectacle. She'd be basking in the glow of her moment, replaying the way the wine splashed across my face in her mind. I sat alone in the dimly lit kitchen, tapping my fingers against the wooden table. The house was quiet. Too quiet. It hadn't always been like this. There was a time when our home had been filled with warmth, laughter, late-night conversations. But that was years ago. Now the silence was suffocating. The front door opened. Claire's footsteps were light, almost careful. She was expecting me to be in bed, curled up and licking my wounds like a kicked dog. She didn't expect me to be sitting here, waiting. When she stepped into the kitchen and saw me, her smirk faltered for just a second. She masked it quickly, tilting her head. "Oh, come on. You're not still upset about that, are you?" I didn't respond. She sighed dramatically, tossing her purse onto the counter. Seriously, it was a joke. Everyone was laughing. You always take things so personally. I still didn't say anything. That was when she actually looked at me. Really looked at me. Her smirk faded. "What?" I held up the notepad. She squinted at it. "What the hell is that?" I flipped it closed and set it aside. "A list." Her brows furrowed. "A list of what?" I met her gaze evenly. "Everything you've ever done to me." Silence. For the first time in a long time, Claire had no quick comeback, no sarcastic remark, no dismissive wave of her hand. She let out a forced laugh. "Oh, please." She crossed her arms. "Don't be dramatic." I didn't look away. She shifted uncomfortably. "You're serious?" I nodded. Something flickered across her face. Not guilt. Claire never felt guilt. It was something closer to annoyance, maybe even nervousness. She didn't like this. She didn't like me remembering. For years, she had relied on me forgetting, on me brushing it aside, on me letting it go. Her jaw tightened. "I don't know what you think you're doing, but I'm not in the mood for your little pity party." I leaned forward, resting my arms on the table. "You humiliated me tonight." She rolled her eyes. "Oh my God, it was a joke. You threw wine in my face. You deserved it." And there it was. No regret, no apology, just justification. I pushed my chair back and stood. This was the last time. Her brow furrowed. "What?" I met her gaze. "This was the last time you'll ever get to humiliate me." Claire let out a laugh, but there was an edge of unease behind it. For the first time in years, she had lost control, and for the first time in years, I had taken it back. The last straw. I shrugged. "Maybe. But you're acting like someone who's suddenly very worried about a harmless joke." Claire's jaw tightened. She looked away, rubbing her fingers against the rim of her glass. "I swear to God, if you try to embarrass me with that video, I set my coffee down with a quiet clink. "You what?" She snapped her mouth shut, and just like that, the power shifted. For years, Claire had held all the control. She dictated how our marriage functioned, how people perceived us, even how I saw myself. She had crafted a narrative where she was the strong, charismatic wife with the weak, pathetic husband who was lucky to have her. But now she was the one floundering. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the table. "You've spent years making me feel small, Claire. You've torn me down in front of your friends, your colleagues, hell, even strangers. And every time I let it go, every time I told myself it wasn't worth the fight, that I loved you too, much to make it a big deal. Her eyes flickered, but she didn't say anything. But last night, I continued, last night I realized something. I realized that you don't love me, Claire. You love control. You love having someone to belittle, someone to make yourself feel superior to. That's not... I held up a hand. Don't. Don't insult me by pretending otherwise. She swallowed. I sat back again, watching her carefully. I'm not going to post the video if that's what you're worried about. I'm not petty. But I am done pretending. She hesitated. What? What does that mean? I exhaled slowly. It means things are going to change. Claire wasn't used to this. She wasn't used to me standing my ground, to me refusing to play along. She tried to mask her unease with indifference, but I saw right through it. Fine, she muttered, pushing off the counter. You want to play this little game? Be my guest. She turned on her heel and stalked out of the kitchen. I didn't stop her. I didn't need to, because for the first time in our marriage, Claire was the one walking away uncertain. The shift. Claire stormed up the stairs, her footsteps heavy, each one laced with frustration. She expected me to follow, to chase her down, to try and talk things through, to beg for an apology that would never come. That's how it had always been. She would cross a line, I would call her out, she'd deflect, I'd try to smooth things over and the cycle would repeat. But not this time. This time, I stayed put. I picked up my coffee, took a slow sip, and let the silence settle around me. Claire thought she was in control of this situation, but she had no idea just how much I had already taken back. Because while she had been out humiliating me last night, I had been busy. I pulled my phone from my pocket and opened my banking app. The numbers were exactly where I had left them. Half of our shared savings now securely in my own account. Legally mine. Claire had always been the one who managed the finances, not because I couldn't, but because she liked to. She liked knowing where the money was going, how much was being spent, and, more importantly, how much power she had over it.